Look at this geometry. One object, always the same face, for 4.5 billion years, never rotating, never wavering. That is not natural. That is statistically impossible. They told us it is simple tidal locking, basic physics, case closed. For 50 years that was the story, but the data shows something stranger. The Sun pulls the Moon twice as hard as Earth does, and recently a growing number of astronomers have argued that the Moon is not a moon at all, it is a planet. On April 12, 2026, NASA is launching Artemis II. 4 astronauts will fly around the Moon for the first time in over 50 years. We are going back. But according to a new analysis of Apollo seismic data, we might be landing on something very different than we thought. 3 things just lined up in the data. First, the orbital mechanics prove it orbits the Sun, not Earth. Second, the crater depths hit a mathematical limit that should not exist. Third, the Apollo seismometers recorded the Moon ringing like a bell for over 4 hours. Make sure you're subscribed, because when Artemis launches in April, you need to know what to look for. I've been tracking the 3i Atlas mystery. Geometric anomalies. Precision that does not fit natural formation. But while we were hunting for patterns in deep space, the strangest pattern was sitting right here. 238,000 miles away. Every single night. We stopped looking at it because it became familiar. It turns out the Moon has the same problem as Atlas. The geometry is too perfect. The numbers do not add up. And Atlas might just be the tip of the iceberg. Today we are asking questions about the most familiar object in our sky. Questions the data demands we ask. Let's start with the lock. The Moon always shows us the same face. You've seen it your entire life. The same craters, the same Maria. The far side, you have never seen it. Nobody on Earth has, except through spacecraft cameras. This is called tidal locking. Earth's gravity grabbed the Moon billions of years ago and locked it in place. 1 rotation per orbit, perfectly synchronized, for 4.5 billion years. And for decades, that was the explanation. Simple, clean. But here is the problem. Tidal locking requires an almost perfect distribution of mass inside the Moon. The heavy side must face Earth, like a weight on a string, always pointing down. And our Moon does this, perfectly, for billions of years, through meteor impacts, through thermal expansion and contraction, through every gravitational perturbation from the Sun and planets. The lock never drifts. It is precise to within a tiny fraction of a degree. Except there is a problem. We have mapped the Moon's gravity field using laser altimetry and the Lunar reconnaissance orbiter, and the mass is not evenly distributed. There are dense regions under the surface called mascons, mass concentrations. Some of these are located under the large Maria, the dark patches you see with your eyes. They are heavy, dense, and they are not symmetrically placed. The Moon is lumpy on the inside, which means, by the laws of physics, the tidal lock should wobble. It should drift over geological time, even slightly, but it does not. The Moon has kept the exact same face pointed at Earth with impossible precision. That is not just unlikely, that is suspiciously precise. So if the mass is uneven, what is holding the lock? This brings us to the orbit. We are taught that the Moon orbits Earth. That is the image in every textbook. Moon circles Earth. Earth circles Sun. Simple nested orbits. But run the numbers. The gravitational force the Sun exerts on the Moon is approximately 2.2 times stronger than the force Earth exerts on the Moon. Not slightly stronger. More than twice as strong, so here is the question. If the Sun is pulling the Moon more than Earth is, what is the Moon actually orbiting? Look at the Moon's path through space, not relative to Earth, relative to the Sun. The Moon does not loop around Earth. It moves in a smooth, nearly circular ellipse around the Sun. Earth causes small wiggles in that path, perturbations. But the Moon never curves back on itself. It always moves forward along a solar orbit. Compare that to Jupiter's moons. They loop. They are under the gravitational dominance of Jupiter. Same with Saturn's moons. Those are true satellites. But our Moon? The Sun is in control, which raises a simple question. If the Moon orbits the Sun, and the Sun dominates its motion, why do we call it a moon? Why is it not classified as a planet? In 2017, a scientist named Jean-Luc Margot published a paper in the International Journal of Astronomy and Astrophysics titled "The Moon Meets All Requirements of the IAU Definition for Planets." His argument is direct. The International Astronomical Union defines a planet with 3 criteria. First, it must orbit the Sun. Second, it must be massive enough to form a sphere. Third, it must clear its orbital neighbourhood. The Moon meets the second criterion. Obviously, it is a sphere. The third is debatable, but Margot argues that in the Earth-Moon system, the Moon contributed to clearing the shared orbital space. Pluto lost its planetary status because it failed this test. The Moon passes, but the first criterion is where it gets interesting. The body must orbit the Sun, and as we just established, the Moon does. Earth perturbs that orbit, but it does not dominate it, the Sun does. So according to the IAU's own definition, the Moon is a planet, the 9th planet of the solar system, not a satellite, a planet sharing an orbit with Earth. Now before you dismiss this, consider what it means. If the Moon is a planet, then Earth is the only rocky planet in the inner solar system without a true satellite. Mars has Phobos and Deimos, but those are captured asteroids. Earth has a companion planet. Some call this a double planet system. 2 planets sharing an orbit. But that raises a much bigger question. How? How do 2 planets end up in a shared orbit with one of them tidally locked despite having uneven internal mass? What kind of event creates that? The official answer is the giant impact hypothesis. About 4.5 billion years ago, a Mars-sized protoplanet called Theia collided with early Earth. The impact ejected massive amounts of debris into orbit. That debris coalesced into the Moon. It is a violent, elegant theory, and the evidence supports it. Moon rocks brought back by the Apollo missions have isotopic signatures that match Earth's mantle. Oxygen isotopes, titanium isotopes, chromium isotopes. They are identical. The Moon is made of Earth, a chunk blown off in a catastrophic collision. But here is the paradox. If the Moon formed from a collision between Earth and Theia, it should be a mixture of both bodies. Even in the most favourable simulations, the Moon should be 60% Theia material and 40% Earth material. And since every planet in the solar system has a unique isotopic fingerprint, Theia's signature should be visible. Mars is isotopically distinct from Earth. Venus is distinct from Earth. Asteroids are distinct from Earth. But the Moon? Identical, as if it was made entirely from Earth. No Theia signature at all. This is called the isotopic crisis. It implies one of 2 things. Either Theia had the exact same composition as Earth, which is statistically absurd, or the collision was so violent that it mixed every atom perfectly. But the physics of a collision that energetic does not allow a Moon to form. The material would vaporize completely. A 2021 paper in Nature Communications explored this problem using computer simulations. The researchers found that for a Moon as large as ours to form from a collision, the planet must be in a very specific mass range. between 1 and 6 Earth masses. If the planet is too small, there is not enough debris. If the planet is too large, the debris vaporizes completely and cannot coalesce. It becomes a gas disk where small moonlets form, spiral inward, and crash back into the planet. Our moon exists in a narrow Goldilocks zone, a formation window so precise it borders on impossible, and yet here it is, tidally locked with uneven mass, orbiting the Sun more than it orbits Earth, isotopically identical to Earth despite collision physics saying it should not be. So if the formation story has problems, what about the structure? This is where the Apollo data becomes critical. The Moon's average density is 3.34 grams per cubic centimetre. Earth's density is 5.5 grams per cubic centimetre. The Moon is significantly lighter, about 60% the density of Earth. If the Moon formed from Earth's mantle, you would expect similar density. But it is lighter. This suggests the Moon has a very small iron core, or almost no core at all. It is a low-density object. But here is the contradiction. We just established that the Moon has mascons, heavy, dense regions buried under the surface. If the Moon is low-density overall but has localized heavy spots, what does that imply? It implies the structure is not uniform. It is engineered. Light frame, heavy counterweights. And this connects directly to the seismic data. When the Apollo missions landed between 1969 and 1972, they deployed a network of seismometers called the Apollo Lunar Surface Experiments package. These instruments were designed to measure moonquakes and understand the Moon's internal structure. What they recorded shocked the scientists. The Moon does not behave like Earth. On Earth, seismic waves from an earthquake or impact dissipate quickly, minutes at most. The energy scatters into the layers, different densities, different compositions. The waves die out. But on the Moon, seismic waves do not dissipate. They build, and they ring. The most famous test occurred during Apollo 12. After the astronauts returned to orbit, Mission Control deliberately crashed the lunar module ascent stage into the surface. The impact released energy equivalent to 1 ton of TNT. The seismometers recorded the result. The signal did not spike and decay. It grew slowly, reached a peak, and then rang continuously for 3 hours and 20 minutes. A later test using the Apollo 13 S4B booster stage produced a signal that lasted over 4 hours. The vibrations travelled deep, through the crust, through the mantle, and they did not stop. Clive R. Neal, a professor at the University of Notre Dame who analysed the Apollo seismic data archive, described it simply. The Moon rang like a bell. Why? The official explanation is that the Moon's interior is more uniform than Earth's. Fewer layers, less differentiation. Dry rock without water to dampen vibrations. And the surface is fractured from billions of years of impacts, which traps the seismic energy and causes it to reverberate. That is a reasonable hypothesis. But here is the problem. If the Moon is made from Earth, blown off in a collision, you would expect similar internal structure, similar layering, a small core, a mantle, a crust, different scale, but similar composition. Instead, the Apollo seismic data suggests the Moon's interior is fundamentally different, rigid, uniform, and possibly hollow. For a planetary body to ring for 4 hours, it cannot be a solid sphere of compressed rock. Rock absorbs vibration. A solid iron core would dampen the signal immediately. The only way to get a prolonged resonant ring is if the structure is a rigid shell with empty space inside, like a gong or a bell. Now, mainstream science does not claim the Moon is hollow, but the data suggests the interior is not what we expected. And that brings us to the surface. If the Moon has a rigid internal structure, you would expect the surface to reflect that, and it does. Look at the craters. Tycho crater is 85 kilometers wide. Its depth is 4.8 kilometers. That is a width-to-depth ratio of approximately 1 to 18. Copernicus crater is 93 kilometers wide and 3.8 kilometers deep. Aristarchus is 40 kilometers wide and 3.7 kilometers deep. Do you see the pattern? Large craters have remarkably consistent depth ratios, between 1 to 15 and 1 to 25. They are wide, shallow plates, but small craters are different. They are narrow and deep, more like bowls. Why? The standard explanation is gravity. When a massive asteroid hits the Moon, it releases so much energy that the rock liquefies. It splashes. Gravity then pulls the material back down, smoothing the crater over geological time. That makes sense for a natural body. But here is the problem. If that explanation is correct, crater depth should vary with impact energy. A faster asteroid should make a deeper crater. A larger asteroid should penetrate further, but they do not. Every large crater, regardless of impact angle, velocity or size, reaches the same depth limit. Between 4 and 6 kilometers. It is as if there is a hard boundary under the surface, a layer the impactors cannot penetrate. They hit it, spread outward, and stop. And look at the composition. Lunar samples returned by Apollo show unusually high concentrations of titanium. Some samples contained titanium levels 10 times higher than the richest deposits on Earth. Titanium is a refractory metal. It is incredibly strong, lightweight and heat-resistant. It is the metal we use to build spacecraft hulls, jet engines, and deep-sea submarines. Why is the Moon's surface enriched with titanium? And why is the titanium concentrated on the near side, the side with the mascons, the side that is tidally locked to Earth? Then, there are the lights. For over 300 years, astronomers have documented anomalous phenomena on the Moon called transient lunar phenomena, or TLP. These are brief flashes, glows or hazes observed on the lunar surface. In 1787, Sir William Herschel, the astronomer who discovered Uranus, reported seeing 3 bright red spots on the Moon that looked like glowing embers. In 1969, just before the Apollo 11 landing, astronauts in lunar orbit reported luminescence in the Aristarchus crater. NASA has catalogued over 500 TLP reports spanning centuries. The official explanation is outgassing. Pockets of gas escaping from underground vents, possibly ionized by solar radiation. But the Moon is supposed to be geologically dead. A dead body does not vent glowing gas for 3 centuries, and gas does not form geometric patterns. Some TLP reports describe lights in triangular formations or clusters. They blink, they move, so let us take inventory. To accept the Moon as a natural object, you must accept the following. 1. A giant impact occurred in an impossibly narrow mass range, producing a Moon isotopically identical to Earth despite collision physics saying it should be mixed. 2. That Moon settled into an orbit where the Sun pulls it twice as hard as Earth, yet it remains tidally locked with perfect precision despite having uneven internal mass. 3. The Moon's density is unusually low, but it contains heavy mascons placed exactly where they need to be to maintain the tidal lock. 4. When struck, the Moon rings like a hollow bell for hours, suggesting a rigid internal structure fundamentally different from Earth. 5. Large craters across the surface all reach the same depth limit, as if hitting a subsurface boundary. 6. The surface is enriched with titanium, a structural metal concentrated on the locked side. 7. The Moon has displayed unexplained lights for over 300 years that behave unlike natural outgassing. That is a lot of coincidences. Or There is one explanation that resolves all of them. The moon's structure is not random, it is precise. The mascons are counterweights, the titanium is armour. The shallow craters are impacts against a reinforced shell. The seismic ringing is the resonance of a hollow frame. And the tidal lock is not an accident, it is a function. But here is the thing. I'm not saying the moon is artificial. I am saying the data shows patterns, and patterns demand explanations. The official explanations require you to believe in 7 separate miracles that all happen to the same object. The alternative requires you to rethink what we are looking at. On April 12th, 2026, Artemis II will carry 4 astronauts around the far side of the moon. They will see what no human has seen in over 50 years. We are told this is preparation for Mars, a test of life support systems. But after 50 years of silence, why the sudden urgency to return? Why the focus on the lunar South Pole, where water ice and transient lunar phenomena have both been detected? Maybe we are going back because the data from Apollo was never fully explained. Maybe we realize that the moon is not what we thought it was. And maybe, just maybe, we're going to knock on the door, because here is the thing. The moon should not exist. Not like this. Not this size. Not this close. Not this perfectly locked. The formation window is impossibly narrow. The tidal lock is too precise. The seismic data is paradoxical. The orbit defies conventional classification. And yet here it is. Every single night. Same face. Same craters. Same mystery. So here is my question for you. Which explanation requires more faith? The natural theory, where 7 independent miracles occur to the same object by chance, or the alternative, where the precision is not coincidence but design? Is the moon a planet that formed in a 1 in a billion window, or is it something else? Something we have been looking at for thousands of years without truly seeing it? What do you think? Let me know in the comments. I read every single one. Make sure you are subscribed, because when Artemis II flies around that far side in April, we are going to be watching. Not just the mission, but what shows up in the data that does not make the headlines. What instruments detect that NASA does not explain. If you love these deep dives into questions we are not supposed to ask, hit that like button. Share this with someone who looks at the moon and wonders. Because we have been staring at that thing our entire lives. Maybe it is time we actually saw it.